Today we're going to discuss two HR-related topics about e-HR, electronic human resources, with Dr. Emma Parry, Principal Research Fellow at the Cranfield School of Management. Emma, as you found in your research, many large, and small, but mostly large organisations have installed e-HR. What were some of their objectives in doing so, and actually were they achieved?
Well, I think there are three main objectives, so perhaps if we go through those in turn. The first one, which is the obvious one, I guess, is to improve efficiency and save money. So e-HRM has the capacity to reduce headcount because things are done automatically, to make things much faster, and generally to reduce the use of paper and the such like, and take the administrative burden off of the people. So, you know, that can make things much more efficient and much cheaper. As to whether organisations had achieved that particular goal, well, there wasn't really a lot of evidence out to say either way, to be honest with you. I think one of the interesting things was that organisations tended to have these objectives, but then not actually follow that up and measure whether they had. So we had some anecdotal stories of perhaps losing one of the HR team, not using paper anymore, making things much faster, but not any real evidence that these goals had been achieved. Okay, so the second, if you like, of our three is really to improve service delivery. So lots of the people that I spoke to in one of the studies that I conducted talked about not only making processes faster, but also making them more accurate. Because what e-HRM means is that a lot of the employee information is entered directly by the employee or by the manager. So there's less scope for mistakes there. And also it frees up a lot of time of the HR function, which means that they're able to do more value-added activity, such as sitting with managers, working with them on things like recruitment, making recruitment decisions, designing training programs and such like, which allows them to add more value and give a better service to their clients, which is obviously the managers and employees. And the final one of the three, which, if you like, is the loftier goal of the three, is really this idea that e-HRM has the capacity to allow HR to become more strategic. And by that, I mean it allows them to have more impact on business decision making. So a lot of the theoretical literature around e-HRM has suggested that e-HRM allows HR managers to do this by firstly freeing time. So they're not doing all the admin and transactional stuff, so they've got more time to have an impact on business decisions. But also it provides them with reliable, accurate data about their human resources, which can then feed into business decision making. Again, I think the jury is still out about whether these last two goals have been achieved, because again, there's not really any data from the organisations about whether they have.
But very effective goals to have, but maybe not have all achieved them. So what were some of the factors that were involved in whether they were successful or not in achieving these?
Okay, well, I think there are a couple of obvious ones. I mean, firstly, the technology itself and the design of the e-HRM system. Amazingly, you might think, but going into some of these organisations, some of the systems were very difficult to use, so they didn't have that high usability factor. Some of the people, employees, managers, and even HR people that were supposed to use them perhaps hadn't been trained properly in the technology, which obviously makes it very difficult for them to reap the benefits, if you like, when they're struggling to actually use it. I think another thing that's quite important is that, especially with this goal around making HR more strategic, is that that sort of role actually requires a completely different set of skills from HR people. And what we found in a lot of organisations is that e-HRM had enabled these people to have more time and had taken that transactional administrative burden off of them. But then these people didn't actually have the skills that they needed, whether those be project management skills, consultancy skills, data analysis skills, to actually go on and have that more strategic business-focused role. So these are a few of the things that had some impact. Another one that I'd just like to mention finally is really the engagement of people with the system. And in a few of the organisations that I worked with, what you see is that the companies have introduced these systems really without seeing it as a change process. So they haven't introduced proper change management procedures, haven't looked at achieving the buy-in of employees and managers, or really getting people engaged with the system. And of course, if people haven't bought into the system, aren't engaged, then they're not going to use it or not going to put themselves out to learn it, and then it doesn't have the impact that they want.
So some useful factors there for HR practitioners when they're installing e-HR to consider.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma.